My name is Matthew Connolly, and on the night of April 18th, 2017, I died. I know how that sounds. I know what people think when they hear something like that. Some call it a hallucination, a trick of the brain, a trauma response. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt, and what I learned in the moments beyond death changed my life forever. I was never a religious person. I wasn't against the idea of God, but I had no real faith. I thought the idea of heaven and hell was just something people used to comfort themselves. Life was about experiences, about making memories, about expressing who you were. And for me, one of those expressions had always been tattoos. I had my first tattoo done when I was 21. It was a small symbol, something meaningless that I got just because I thought it looked cool. Over the years, my body became a canvas. Some of the tattoos I had were reminders of things I had been through, marks of personal struggles and triumphs. Others were impulsive choices, things I had done on a whim, sitting in a tattoo parlor after seeing a design on a wall and deciding, why not? I never once thought that ink could hold any deeper meaning beyond what I gave it. To me, tattoos were just art, something permanent that I could carry with me, something that made me unique. But I was wrong. The night I died wasn't anything special. I wasn't doing anything reckless. I wasn't in a bad place emotionally. It was just a normal night out with friends. We had gone to our usual spot, a bar we had been frequenting for years. I wasn't even drinking much, just a couple of beers, nothing out of the ordinary. I felt fine. I felt happy. I remember laughing, leaning back in my chair, and thinking about how good it was to be surrounded by people I trusted, people who had been there for me through everything. Then in an instant, everything changed. It started as a tightness in my chest, like someone had grabbed my ribs and started squeezing. At first, I thought it was just indigestion or maybe a muscle cramp, but then the pain spread, sharp and unbearable. It felt like a hot blade had been driven straight into my heart. My vision blurred. My body suddenly felt too heavy, and the sounds around me started to distort. Someone was calling my name. I could hear their voice, but it sounded far away, as if they were on the other side of a wall. I tried to speak, to move, to do anything, but my body wouldn't respond. The world tilted. My knees buckled. And then nothing. I expected to wake up in an ambulance, to hear the sound of sirens, to feel hands pressing against my chest as paramedics tried to revive me. But that's not what happened. Instead, I found myself in a place that defies explanation. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't unconsciousness. It was something else entirely. I was floating. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but when I looked down, I saw my own body lie on the floor of the bar. My friends were gathered around me, their faces filled with panic. One of them was shaking me, shouting my name, while another was on the phone, likely calling for help. The sight of my lifeless form should have terrified me, but in that moment, I felt nothing. No pain, no fear, just a strange, detached curiosity. Then the darkness came. It wasn't like closing your eyes or being in a pitch-black room. It was thick, alive, pressing against me from every side. The warmth I had felt, the light from the world I had just left, was gone. I was surrounded by a void so heavy, so consuming, that I could feel it sinking into me. I tried to move, but there was nowhere to go. I tried to speak, but I had no voice. I wasn't alone. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I felt them. They were watching me. I couldn't see them, but I could feel their presence. Figures in the dark, moving just beyond my vision. Then the whispers started, low at first, like the wind rustling through trees, but growing louder. The voices weren't human. They were layered, overlapping, speaking a language I didn't understand, yet somehow I knew exactly what they were saying. They were laughing. Then a voice broke through the others, deep and thunderous, shaking the very fabric of the void around me. "You are marked." I didn't understand what it meant, but the moment I heard those words, a wave of terror crashed over me. Something was wrong. I had done something. I had allowed something into my life without even realizing it. The shadows in the darkness began to move closer, their whispers turning into guttural growls. I could feel them reaching for me. And then I saw them. They weren't human. They weren't even creatures in the way we understand them. They were entities, beings of pure darkness, their forms shifting and writhing as if they were made of smoke and shadow. And they knew me. They had been waiting for me. I felt something wrap around me. Chains, but not physical ones. They were unseen, yet I could feel their weight. They pulled me down, deeper into the void, and as they did, the realization struck me like a hammer. My tattoos. They weren't just ink. They weren't just self-expression. They were something more. Some of them were meaningless, sure, but others, I had no idea where they had come from. I had markings on my body from cultures I had never studied, symbols I had chosen without knowing their history. And now I understood. They weren't just art. They were doors, contracts, agreements I had made without even knowing it. The entities in the darkness knew. They had been waiting for me because, in some way, I had already given them permission. I struggled, trying to fight against whatever was holding me. But it was useless. I had no body, no strength, no way to resist. I was being claimed. Then everything changed. A light erupted into void, so powerful and radiant that the darkness shrieked and recoiled. The force of it was overwhelming. And then I saw him, Jesus. There are no words to describe what it was like to look upon him. He wasn't just light. He was the source of all light. His presence was unlike anything I had ever experienced. He was love, but not the kind of love we understand here on earth. His love was alive, tangible, wrapping around me with an intensity that brought me to my knees. His eyes held eternity itself, seeing every part of me, every thought I had ever had, every moment of my existence. I expected judgment, but what I felt was something even deeper, truth. He reached out his hand, and in that moment, a vision unfolded before me. I saw the history of tattoos, the way they had been used throughout time. I saw priests in ancient temples marking people with symbols tied to gods and spirits, some divine, but many others dark. I saw warriors etching sigils into their skin, believing they would bring them power. not realizing they were binding themselves to something far worse. Then I saw the modern world. Millions of people blindly choosing symbols, inking their skin with markings they didn't understand. Some were harmless, others were not. Some carried spiritual weight, remnants of rituals long forgotten, yet still holding the same power they had thousands of years ago. Jesus' voice echoed through my soul. The enemy does not force. He waits for invitation. The realization shook me. These markings, these symbols, they weren't just decoration. They were agreements, invitations, doors left open for things that had no business being in my life. And I had opened them willingly, without ever knowing what I had done. Then I was shown something even more terrifying. The future. The vision shifted, and suddenly I was no longer watching history unfold. I was looking into the future. What I saw next sent a chill through my soul. I was shown a time when markings would no longer be a choice but a necessity, a requirement to function in society. I saw people lining up, standing in long queues, waiting for something that they were told was harmless, something that they were assured was for their own good. At first, it seemed like just another technological advancement. Governments and corporations were introducing digital tattoos, biometric imprints that would replace traditional identification. It started small: medical records, personal identification, a way to keep track of finances and security. People were told it was convenient, efficient, the next step in human progress. But beneath the surface, something far more sinister was unfolding. Jesus allowed me to see beyond what the world would be told. I saw that this marking, though seemingly harmless, carried a spiritual weight unlike anything before. It wasn't just a system, it was an allegiance, and the moment people accepted it, something changed in them. It was as if a door within them closed, a final separation from the truth. Those who received this mark could no longer hear the voice of God, could no longer feel that pull towards salvation. They had made their choice, and it was irreversible. I saw churches divided. Some religious leaders stood in pulpits, assuring their congregations that this mark was nothing to fear, that it was simply a tool for survival in an evolving world. They quoted scripture out of context, twisting its meaning to convince their followers that there was no danger. But then I saw the remnant, the few who refused to conform. They were hunted, shunned, cast out from society. The world turned against them, branding them as extremists, as dangers to progress. They were denied access to jobs, health care, even food. And yet, they stood firm. The scene shifted again, and I saw the spiritual consequences of this mark. Those who received it carried a new energy, something dark, something that clung to them like a shadow. It was not just a physical mark, but a spiritual contract, much like the tattoos I had unknowingly given myself. But this one was different. This one was final. Jesus spoke again, his voice filled with sorrow. A choice is coming. A mark will be given. Most will choose wrong. The weight of those words crushed me. I wanted to scream, to tell the people I was seeing to stop, to turn back before it was too late. But they couldn't hear me. They had already chosen. Then, just as suddenly as the vision had started, it ended. The overwhelming presence of Jesus still surrounded me, but the images were gone. I was back in the radiant light of his presence, my soul trembling from what I had witnessed. I felt the weight of my own choices, the reckless way I had marked myself without understanding the spiritual significance of what I had done. I felt my knees, tears streaming down my face. Lord, what have I done? I sobbed, my heart breaking under the realization of my ignorance. Jesus reached out and touched my shoulder. The moment he did, warmth and peace flooded through me, replacing the fear with something I had never felt before. Hope. You were deceived, as many are, he said gently, but you are not beyond redemption. His words hit me like a tidal wave. Redemption. It was still possible? Even after everything I had done? Even after unknowingly inviting darkness into my life? Jesus lifted his hand, and for the first time, I saw myself through his eyes. I saw the marks on my skin, but they weren't just ink. They were spiritual bonds. Some glowed faintly, remnants of choices made in innocence, but others pulsed with darker energy, symbols that had tied me to things I had never meant to be part of. Then, one by one, I watched as the dark marks faded, dissolving under the light of his presence. The enemy cannot hold what has been surrendered to me, Jesus said. I felt something shift inside me, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying being lifted. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But then, Jesus' expression grew serious again. You must go back, he said. Panic surged through me. No, I whispered. Please let me stay. I had never felt peace like this before. I had never known love like this before. The thought of leaving his presence, of returning to the world I had come from, felt unbearable. But Jesus shook his head. You have a mission, he said. You must warn them. I felt myself being pulled backward. The light around me began to fade. I reached out, desperate to hold on, but I was being drawn away. The last thing I saw was Jesus' eyes, filled with love, filled with urgency. Tell them before it is too late. And then I fell. It felt like I was plummeting through space, through time, through reality itself. I crashed back into my body with a force so powerful that I gasped, my lungs burning as if I had been drowning. My chest convulsed, my heart slammed against my ribs, and suddenly I was back. I was in a hospital room. Tubes were attached to my body. Machines beeped around me, and nurses were scrambling, shouting for a doctor. My vision was blurry, my limbs felt like lead, but I was alive. I had been dead, clinically dead, for over 15 minutes. The doctors couldn't explain how I had come back. They had given up on resuscitating me. And yet, here I was, the weight of what I had seen, of what I had been shown, pressed down on me. The first thing I did when I was strong enough to speak was ask for a mirror. When the nurse brought one, my hand shook as I lifted it to look at my arms. The tattoos were still there. Physically, nothing had changed, but I could feel it. The weight of them was gone. The chains that had bound me had been broken. I knew then what I had to do. I had to tell people. I had to warn them. Since that day, I have dedicated my life to spreading the truth. I don't tell people to fear tattoos or to believe that every single one is a demonic contract. But I do tell them to be aware, to understand what they are inviting into their lives. Because the enemy does not force, he waits for invitation. Some have listened, some have laughed in my face. But I don't care. I know what I saw. I know what's coming. And I know that the time to choose is running out. Jesus is real. The spiritual realm is real. And a time is coming when every person will have to make a choice that will define their eternity. I was given a second chance. I was pulled from the darkness and shown the truth. And now, I share that truth with anyone who will listen. The question is, will you? This story is not just about tattoos. It is about spiritual awareness. It is about understanding that what we do, what we invite into our lives, has consequences beyond what we can see. The enemy doesn't work by force. He works through deception, through small compromises, through things that seem harmless but carry deeper meanings. Jesus showed me the future, and it is coming faster than most people realize. A time is approaching when the world will be asked to make a choice. The mark will come, and most will choose wrong. But for those who are awake, for those who listen, there is hope. Jesus offers redemption. He offers freedom. But the time is short. Are you ready for what is coming? If this message resonated with you, if you feel something stirring inside, don't ignore it. Take it to prayer. Ask God to reveal the truth to you. And most importantly, share this with others before it is too late. There is still time to wake up. There is still time to choose. But soon, the choice will be made for you. Choose wisely.